Good evening, everybody, and welcome to September's Planning Applications Committee. We'll start straight in on the agenda. Apologies for absence. I believe we have apologies from Stephen. Go ahead.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor David Dean. Councillor Najib Latif is substituting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The rest of the committee is present. Item number 2, declarations of pecuniary interest. We have any?
I don't have a pecuniary interest, but I did actually help kick off the Wimbledon Park development when I was cabinet member. So I suppose you could say I have an interest in it. Which I hope your rule will be not enough to stop me voting on it.
It's not a pecuniary interest. I don't believe it's anything that would stop you from taking part. It's okay. A council-owned scheme anyway, so all of us have an interest because it's a council scheme. Minutes of the previous meeting, can they be agreed as a true record of the meeting? Agreed, thank you. Right, planning applications. We have 3, numbers 5, 6, and 7. We'll go through them in that order. On just the first one, we have an objector to speak first, who I'm assuming is joining us by Zoom, and who will get 3 minutes to speak, and then followed by the agent speaking in favour of the application, who will get the exact same 3 minutes to respond. That is the public input into our meeting tonight. The rest of the discussions will be just amongst the councillors at the meeting this evening, the members of the committee. Okay, so we'll go straight into item 5, which is Wimbledon Park Lake, and I'm sure we have an officer online who will present this application.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just going to share my screen. Can you see that, Chair?
Yes, we can, and we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Members, the application site is Wimbledon Park and its lake. Wimbledon Park is a Grade 2 star listed park. It is sited within Wimbledon, east of the main site for the Alling and Lawn Tennis Club. The proposal itself is for engineering works to the existing lake and surroundings in order to make the lake safe as required under the Reservoirs Act. The application has been put forward. The applicant is the council with agents representing, as the council is responsible for maintenance and upkeep of the lake. The proposal comprises several forms of engineering operations. Starting on the sort of northwestern side, an auxiliary spillway is to be created here. What that involves is a replacement of the existing footpath surface with a new one, and then bedded in at a slight angle with angling down towards the lake. New curb edging is also proposed along the northern boundary. That's roughly 12.5 centimeters in height. Further along, the footpath is also to be replaced along here, all in the tarmac surface. Again, further curb edging is proposed along the northern boundary. Additional planting is proposed along the northern boundary as well, and a replacement gravel surface is proposed where that green line is, to accommodate and protect the existing trees that are there immediately adjacent to the lake. To the far east of the site, there is an existing spillway to the lake. This is proposed to be widened to 6 meters, along with new embankments either side. The embankments would form of grasscrete. And this would also involve the loss of 10 trees to make way for the widened spillway. A new brook would also be formed through the park to accommodate the water runoff and to hold water back before it is discharged off further downstream. That would cut through the existing mini golf area, but once completed, it would not result in the loss of the mini golf zone. So a lot of the drawings, members, as you've seen it within the pack, are very technical. I'm not going to present them all, but and again, this is the northern part where the it's called the auxiliary spillway to be formed with replacement surface. Further far east, this is a close-up of the proposed enlargement to the existing spillway. And the green line here is a proposed eel pass to allow for eels to come in and out through here. As I said, this area here and here is the new embankments to be formed, which is going to be grasscrete. No new tree planting can be done within the new embankments, as under the engineering design, this would not make the embankments work. The existing stilling pond would be widened here. One section drawing just showing the new spillway and how it will be formed, largely a stepping in style and design. As I said, and outlined in the report, the application has been subject to 4 or 5 years in preparation for the submission through the technical steering group as part of the council. As outlined within the report, 10 trees are to be removed as part of the proposal to widen the spillway in this zone here. The trees are outlined within the report, the type and species, and the ones that are shown red here are the ones to be removed. You'll note within the report that this area of the site is largely concealed from public view. The children's play area is to the east, and then a large number of trees would be retained and protected for the duration of the works. Soft additional landscaping is proposed, so particularly with regard to the new brook that would be formed through here. Further additional replacement tree planting is to be provided. This is to be controlled via condition 5, as Historic England have recommended they be consulted as part of the tree planting exercise to ensure the species are acceptable within listed park status. Within the pack, there's some visuals to assist in putting the scheme into context. So existing spillway on the left and proposed on the right. And again, the view from just within the golf course site next door, existing and proposed. And looking back the other way, as I said, the new replacement walkway footpaths to be provided throughout. And again here. And just some site photographs from myself on the site visit. Members will note that some of the tarmac surface that the existing walkway is in a somewhat parts of it is sort of dilapidating with cracks in it. The proposed site compound would be sited behind here, which is just within the athletics ground next door, which is council owned. So that will ensure that the construction compound can be largely hidden from public view in the wider park, which would be useful. And this is where the new auxiliary spillway would be. As I say, replacement surface sited on an angle down towards the lake. And this is the mini golf area where the new brook would be formed through. And the existing spillway is quite small. Some of the trees to be removed would be here and this one. And you see there's one here that's already fallen over due to time. That is to go as well. And the widening the spillway would be here with their spillway shown there, the existing. So overall, Chair, it acknowledged the scheme would result in the loss of trees. However, in the preparations for the design of the proposal, other options were considered, but this option is considered to be the best engineering solution to make the lake safe, whilst also protecting the visual amenity of the wider park. So officers therefore recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We will move to the contributions from first the objector and then the agent. The objector is a Dr. David Dawson, who I believe is joining us on Zoom. So please go ahead, you'll have 3 minutes.
That's right. I hope you can hear me. I'm afraid
We can, thank you.
I can't use my video, so excuse me not appearing in person. I'm a professional environmental scientist and I advise the Friends. We welcome the works to ensure the safety of the dam. The proposals ensure a safe dam, but they modify where, how fast floods will arrive in the public park. My submission is on the effects in the public Wimbledon Park. These are downstream effects. The largest floods there overcome the capacity of the pipe taking water out of the park to the Wandle and Earlsfield, so it backs up against the tube line embankment. So we welcome the proposed sleeping policeman across the Revelstoke Road entrance to the park to protect homes downhill towards Earlsfield. Significant problems remain, and I outline these. The proposals fail the test of paragraph 167 of the National Planning Policy Framework, and I quote, "When determining any planning application, local planning authorities should ensure that flood risk is not increased elsewhere. Where appropriate, applications should be supported by a site-specific flood risk assessment." I asked for a condition to meet this requirement, and I quote the condition I sought. The certification of the top level of the primary outflow weir at 17.12 metres above ordnance datum. This is to ensure compliance with paragraph 167 of the National Planning Policy Framework and to minimise risk to public park facilities, park users and the London Underground Limited railway embankment. The applicant's flood risk assessment concludes on page 13 that the proposals, and I quote, "could cause localised increased water depths in low areas of the park," end of quote. The assessment did not account for a 10% larger flood volume from surface water from Home Park Road, channeled independently into Wimbledon Park Brook.
1 minute remaining.
For these two reasons, it's quite clear that you do not, in the current proposals, meet the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework. Clearly, you need a condition to meet the statutory requirement, something along the lines that I recommended. The sinuous open channel in the Crazy Gulf area enters an underground culvert to return to the brook. Attenuation of flood flows would be better with an open channel for the whole length within the public park. So again, that is our submission, that there should be a design change to achieve that. My first condition returns the level of a lake to Capability Brown's original design. Might this restrict water sports? I say three things. First, the option to lower the level is in the proposed design, so no new work would be required. Second, you should avoid putting users and facilities of the public park at greater risk. And third, the lake has always been shallow and the water sports involve
3 minutes, Chair.
small sailing dinghies,
Please just finish that point and then we'll have to stop you.
canoes, rafts and sailboards, none of which require deep water. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I had my microphone off. The agent represented by Brian Curran, are you there online?
I am, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes or 10 or 15 seconds over.
Thank you. Yeah, just to reiterate some points that Tim may have made. So I suppose primarily the scheme is required to satisfy the statutory obligation of the Reservoir Act 1975 for the Category A reservoir. And if not undertaken, London Borough of Merton could be served an enforcement notice or liable to third-party damages in the event of a breach. The design itself has been refined to balance these engineering works requirements against the impact to the historic landscape, with consideration also given to ecological, arboricultural, environmental constraints, the visual impact, and the impact to the recreational use of the park. And that was done hand in hand with experts in each of those fields to ensure the scheme was sympathetic to the Grade 2 star listed landscape. The scheme is also developed in conjunction with key stakeholders and statutory consultees, including the EA, Historic England, the Garden Trust, the All England Lawn and Tennis Club, Friends of Wimbledon Park, to name a few. And this has kind of been going on since about 2017 through monthly steering groups and then also consultation sessions. And through this refined design, we've been able to take on board some of the input from some of these consultees to include good opportunities to deliver other benefits, which include the river restoration and deculverting, as well as integration of a future compound weir, which would facilitate future lowering of the lake levels should there ever be desilting works undertaking. From a flood risk point of view, hydraulic modelling was undertaken by JBA, who were approved EA consultant, which demonstrated that the proposed scheme does not lead to increased flood risk to the surrounding area and local property. Overall, the proposed measures meet the required aims of the project to accommodate safe passage of flood events, whilst also decreasing risk in the South Fields area downstream. The river restoration, deculverting and the open channel area in the, this was downstream of the actual embankment.
1 minute remaining.
Also improves conveyance, helping reduce the risk of flooding in the park for a 1-in-1 and 1-in-10 year event. And then with the actual future, the compound weir that we're integrating within the works, which allows future lowering of the water level in the lake should desilting occur, reduces flood risk downstream, both within the park itself and then in the South Fields area. And that is all for me.
Thank you very much for that. I'll go back to Tim now. Is there anything that's raised in those two contributions that you feel you want to comment on or come back on?
Chair, if I may, I think one of the key things with this application, it is very technical. We've had the technical experts look at the application, and it has been subject to a lot of stakeholder involvement in the last four years. So the flood risk officer has looked at the proposal and is satisfied that the scheme is acceptable in planning terms subject to conditions. But I appreciate there are differing professional opinions on this issue. But other than that, Chair, no, I don't have anything further to add on.
Okay, thank you very much. We now open it to members of the committee, councillors. Firstly, for questions of clarification on the officer's report. Do I have any? Councillor Draper, Southgate, McGrath, in that order. Nick.
Yeah, I suppose it's really pretty historical, really. When we first started looking at this, we were looking at dredging the lake as part of the overall thing. Has that completely gone now as an idea, or will it happen simultaneously but separately?
Chair, the dredging of the lake is not part of this planning application, but that is something which I'm unaware of, is whether it's actually on the table in the future. That will be more of a question towards the actual steering group led by the flood risk officer of the council and Green Spaces team.
Thank you. Councillor Southgate, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the diagram of the brook meandering through the Grosey Golf area, that's attractive. But I just want to be clear, what happens to it then? Does it disappear underground, go through a culvert all the way to the Wandle? Or?
Chair, my understanding is it does link up to the existing culvert that is there behind the cafe building. That's there. So the purpose of it is to design so that it creates more capacity to holding water back within the park before discharging to that.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath, Simon.
Thank you. At 7.77, there's reference to the ecology impact assessment, and there's various fauna affected, and there's a reference to somewhere else, I couldn't quite find it, but I'm sure I've read it, to the regulations governing eels. And I just wondered, does the council have an officer with the expertise to evaluate this, or does it get sent somewhere else for evaluation?
Chair, we don't have an actual ecologist within the council. We have within our green spaces team some officers who's been involved with the park and the lake heavily. So no, in terms of experts within the development control function of ecology, no, we don't have a particular expert.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crowe, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, please. Dr. Dawson, the objector, raised this issue about the flooding perhaps being transferred elsewhere as a result of these works. Could Mr. Bryson comment on that? And then my other question is, the council's flood risk officer seems to have suggested 4 conditions, and I'm not clear whether those have actually been included in what we're considering tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in terms of flooding elsewhere, so that is a test which the applicants have looked at, provided the technical reports submitted, and our technical expert flood risk officer has looked at it on that basis. So whilst there's a different and professional opinion here between the objector and ourselves, we are satisfied with the design of the scheme, that it has met those that test. In terms of the flood risk officer's conditions, we have put their conditions in within the report. More specifically, are under conditions 10 to 13. So there are further details to be submitted to satisfy the flood risk officer for this proposal. But that is how we have done that now.
Okay, thank you very much for that. One more question, Councillor Latif. Najib.
Thank you, Chair. On page 13, under the council flood risk officer's comments, he states that the flood risk model, states that the culverts are assumed to have no blockages. It would have been good to see the effect of blockages within the park. We know that the recent flooding has been due to blocked drains. So has the applicant done a research with assumed blockages in the culverts? And secondly, have the applicant also looked at the 1 in 100-year flooding that happens?
Chair, in terms of the accommodation for climate change, yes, they have taken that into account in their submissions. In terms of the culvert itself, I can't confirm whether they have assessed the actual culvert in its current form, but the flood risk officer does acknowledge that the flooding would be flooding would be localized within the park, and she has recommended the conditions should be minded to grant permission. So in terms of our technical expert, having looked at the flood risk issue, again, we're happy with the proposal as it is.
Okay, thank you. One more question, Councillor Henry. Joan.
Thank you, Chair. Tim, will you please explain on page 39, 8.1, a little more in details for me, please?
So in regard to local financial considerations?
Yes.
Yes, so the community infrastructure levy. So this is a proposal which wouldn't trigger contributions towards that because it is an engineering operation and doesn't result in additional commercial floor space. So that would only be required on an additional commercial floor space or residential floor space.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move to comments from members of the committee, starting with Councillor Lambritis and then Councillor Draper. Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you. Just to remind colleagues, this is to do with the statutory obligations of this London Borough of Merton. It's about lake safety. It's about being in touch with the Reservoir Act of 1975, and we need to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Draper.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. I was just going to say, on this business about the culvert and the flooding, what we've got at the moment is a watercourse, partly covered culvert, which goes through the park. So in an extreme event, the water will go through the park and out into Southfields. Basically, not very good if you live in Southfields. The way this has been redesigned, and it's not particularly difficult if you think about it, it's going into the park. And so when it starts flooding, and it will start flooding because of environmental change, the water will spill out into the park itself. That's precisely what Dr. Dawson was talking about and saying he objected to it. But far better that it goes into the park and makes the park all wet and horrible than it actually ruins houses in Southfields, even though those houses will be in Wandsworth.
We're doing a good turn for our neighbouring borough. Councillors Crowe and then let's see. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's very unfortunate that we're losing 10 trees, one of them an oak tree that's 100 years old. For the benefit of the committee, and as Councillor Ward will know, I raised this point about moving the trees. Was it possible to move the trees? And Mr. Bryson has sent me an email earlier this evening saying he's taken advice on this, and it is indeed possible to move the trees, partly to do with the location of the trees next to the lake, etc. There's technical reasons. So I think it's sad that we're losing these trees, but I think it's inevitable and can't be avoided. Thank you. Councillor Latif, Najib.
Thank you, Chair. But I agree with Councillor Lambritis and Councillor Draper that it should be approved, which I will certainly support them. But is it possible to have a condition that the applicant does carry out a simple analysis, assuming that the culvert's blocked, and see what the effect is? It's not a very complicated exercise, but it's something that I think we should include as one of the conditions.
I think I'll take advice from the officer on this, but I think rather than imposing a condition, we can instruct the cabinet member with responsibility for this area to look into that, if that would be acceptable. Yep. Okay. We will do that separately from this committee. Any more? Councillor Southgate to comment. Peter.
Yes, I don't think anyone's going to dissent from the fact that we need to do this. However, I did notice walking through the park, perhaps no more than 10 days, 2 weeks ago by the lake, that the rockery and cascade leading from the side of the lake down towards the pavilion actually is in disrepair. It's been closed off, taped off. Looks like it's been that way for a long time actually. And really, this does seem to be the opportunity to get that restored. I have looked at this quite carefully. I'm not sure that that is covered, but I do hope we will take the opportunity to repair that.
Okay, I think equally as officers will be contacting the cabinet and relevant cabinet member on Councillor Najib's point, we will add that to that request. There being no further comments, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions. Can I see all those in favour of that recommendation? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 9. Myself not voting, so that's in effect unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That one is passed. We move to agenda item 6, which is Neath Gardens in Ravensbury in Morden, and an officer to present on that. It's Tim again. Thank you.
No, sorry, Chair. That's Jonathan.
Okay, Jonathan, are you with us?
Sorry. Yes, sorry, Chair. I'm okay. Can I just confirm that members can see the?
We can hear you. We cannot yet see your presentation. We're seeing your home screen of your computer. And now not you.
Hello.
No, having some tech issues, it seems, at the moment.
Can I confirm that members can see the?
We're having real problems hearing you at all and seeing anything. I don't know whether we should give it a minute to see if the tech problems can be fixed. It may be your connection from where you are, or the alternative might be to take on item 7 and come back to this, but I don't know whether item 7 is one that you'd be presenting on as well, Jonathan. Maybe Tim can tell us about that.
Chair, item 7, I'll be presenting.
Oh, sorry.
I think we may have Jonathan back. We just saw him.
Yeah. Hello. Every
Hello.
time I seemed, sorry, when I try and go to share the screen, it seems to sort of freeze me out of the process. I shall try one more time.
Okay.
Just one. Thank you for your patience. Can I ask whether members can see?
There we are. Yes, we can see the plans and we can hear your voice. Thank you very much.
Good. This application is being brought before members due to the level of public interest in the application. The proposals are for, and this is where I can't move the image either. Okay, so if I can just sort of run through my presentation notes, the proposals are for an extension to the side and rear of an end of terrace dwelling, to enlarge the existing dwelling, and with a small one-person dwelling to the side. At the moment, I'm having no joy with moving from one image to another, and my computer's telling me my internet connection is unstable.
Okay, well, we can see the plans before us in our packs.
Okay.
So maybe carry on with verbally giving your report.
Thank you. I'll press ahead. So an earlier application has been refused for a small dwelling at this site. And if I can ask members to refer to page 78 of the committee agenda. In essence, officers determined at delegated level the proposals were too bulky and striking a poor relationship with the existing dwelling. Section 3 of the report identifies the changes between the refused scheme and the current scheme. And if I can refer members to pages 91 and then turn to page 93 of the agenda, if you flip between those two pages, you'll see that the current proposal is not as wide, not as deep from front to back, strikes a better, perhaps an adequate relationship with the dwelling, but it's of a size, design and scale that officers now feel able to support. So trotting through the principles of the proposals optimise housing output in accordance with London Plan objectives. The proposals achieve a satisfactory standard of accommodation for one person, both internally and by far exceed standards externally. The proposals achieve what I would describe as an adequate design. It would have limited impact on the street scene. If you look at the image on the screen in front of you, you'll see that it's a property that's tucked well away in the corner of Neath Gardens. And so I would have liked to have shown you some photographs of the site. I think that would have reassured you that the visual impact would be quite limited. Any increase in parking would likely be modest. I've referred, or I've checked with paragraph 111 of the National Planning Policy Framework, and the advice from the government is that proposals should only be refused on highways grounds where there's an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or where the cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. And officers acknowledge that whilst the proposals have the potential to add a little to parking pressure locally, it's not considered that it could be reasonably sustained that one bedroom dwelling would have a severe impact on the road network. I've checked, or officers have checked, the issue about accessibility. One of the residents had raised, or one of the neighbours had raised a concern that the proposals would add pressure on parking locally because the building was being designed for disabled persons. The proposals could be used or could be accessed by persons with mobility disabilities that would meet the standard M41 of Part M of the building regulations. But I've also checked on Part M42 and M43, which is adaptable dwellings and wheelchair user dwellings. And if somebody wished to come forward with proposals for a wheelchair, a specifically wheelchair accessible unit, then they would need to meet different standards under the building regulations. And so far as we can see, this is a building, so this is a dwelling which would simply meet the basic accessibility standards for both able-bodied and disabled people. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, and I do apologise for the problems with the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, questions from members of the committee? Councillor Latif.
Yes, thank you. In the refused scheme, it shows a double bed, I presume a two-bed scheme, and then revised scheme shows a one bed. Is it the same applicant? Is he now one person as was two previously, or what's the story?
I don't know whether the officer knows that, but I don't think it's relevant to planning decisions who the applicant is. We're judging the proposed building. Am I right on that, Jonathan?
Chair, I think it's perhaps best to divorce issues of who the building might be for, and just simply focus for the moment on, does this meet the national standards or local standards for a one-person dwelling. We do get applications in sometimes for granny annexes and ancillary accommodation. That's not the case here. The applicant has come forward quite honestly with a proposal for a little dwelling at the side of the terrace.
Okay, thank you. A question from Councillor Crowe. I'm afraid we cannot take any contributions from the public. It's just councillors. It's just councillors. I'm sorry, Councillor Crowe, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 91, if the plan had shown a double bed in the bedroom, we'd be looking at a flat which was 1 bedroom, 2 persons, and we'd be saying it should be 50 square meters in floor space. So at the moment, we're looking at a 1 bed, 1 person, and therefore 37 square meters is acceptable. But it seems to me that we kind of can reasonably expect 2 people to be living in this flat, and it therefore is substandard accommodation as defined if we accept it is in fact a 2-person, 1-bedded dwelling. So I'm a bit concerned that we need to be considering how the flat is going to be used, not simply how it's presented on the drawing on page 91.
Okay, Jonathan, do you have a response on that?
Chair. Yep, Chair and Councillor Crowe. For the building to be acceptable, it has to meet a number of standards set out in the National Housing Standards. A 9 square meter bedroom cannot be treated as a double bedroom. So if the owner or occupier of the property chose to try and fit in a double bed in that room, well, good luck to them. You know, it wouldn't be for us as the local planning authority to intervene in that instance. But what we can do is ensure that where bedrooms are provided, that they're up to a certain size to reasonably accommodate a double bed and also space around that. And in this instance, the proposed single bed bedroom would fall considerably below the double bed standard. So it would be unreasonable for the local planning authority to resist on the basis that the future occupants could choose to occupy the unit by 2 people. It would be improper for us to go down that route.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I'm aware members of the public are here, and there was some problem with people who wanted to speak getting in time. I couldn't allow people to speak at the meeting because if we did that, we would have to allow the applicant to speak as well. But I think Councillor Lambritis might have found a workaround and can speak now. Thank you.
So just to declare, I'm a councillor in the ward in which this property is based. And I did pay a visit on site today to have a look. And I'm pleased that the second iteration is much more acceptable. There is a shared path, and I want to know from Jonathan Lewis if he's looked at that shared path and if he can commit or reassure us or make it a condition that the existing shared path will be fully accessible both when it's all said and done and during construction. If that can be given as a reassurance, my residents would be would be more pleased.
Thank you, Jonathan. Sorry.
Chair, I wonder if I could perhaps try and call up the photographs again on the screen. Would you be amenable to that?
Let's give it a go. Yes.
Okay. Can I ask, can you see the images?
I'm afraid not. No.
Okay. Okay. Let's not pursue that. Okay. The proposals do entail occupiers sharing paths, but the design and configuration of the units, even though it would require some adjustment to paths to provide access to the unit, would enable the paths to be contained within the curtilage of the host dwelling. And again, I think it would seem perhaps rather harsh to resist a proposal where two small households shared one path rather than having exclusive access to each dwelling. What I would say in support of the proposals, and this is in terms of trying to meet M42 of the building regulations, is that the design of the proposals is such that you could probably make some adjustments to the path to the front door to ensure better access for the ambulant disabled, if that helps, Councillor Alan Brissis.
Thank you. Councillor Draper, you have a question.
A really quick question. I appreciate, because you haven't got a CPZ in the area, you can't have a no car condition. But you know, as we all know, these little cul-de-sacs have real huge parking problems. Would it be possible to put a condition saying that if there were a CPZ, this would become a no car development?
I don't know whether we can.
I know the answer.
Stipulate probably that before a CPZ is in place, and I think the answer is probably no, but let's double check that.
Chair, we have to make a decision on the circumstances as they are at the moment. Members may recall that was an idea that had been floated with the large Burlington Road development, but I think we had perhaps some more leverage there, where there was an opportunity to revisit parking conditions in the event that a scheme for 456 flats came forward and could impact in the longer term on parking in the Burlington Road area. But I think for something like this, you know, given the size of the dwelling and the likely level of occupancy, I think that may appear rather unreasonable.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to comments from members of the committee. I'm seeing 1, 2, Councillors Southgate and then Alan Brissis. Peter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd always assume when an item was deferred, we got the same report coming back a month later. But what is fascinating is that we don't actually. So para 7.14 suggests to me that Mr. Lewis has distinctly called on this development since that the first version of the report was drafted. So it is no longer quotes the phrase subservient appearance is no longer used. There is reference to officers might normally, yes, this is wider than officers might normally support, possibly harmful impact on the street scene. The design of the roof does not integrate as well as it might. That all telling phrase, as a matter of judgment, officers consider that greater weight can be attached to A than to B. But it's clear that this one is pretty much on the margin, actually. And I want to ask Mr. Lewis, which I'm sure he will not want to answer, whether he's borderline, had this been determined under delegated powers, to have refused it.
I don't think we're going to ask the officer that, because they obviously haven't done it under delegated powers. They've sent it to us, and the officer's report, it's up to us to interpret the officer's report and read it as we see fit as a committee. No, I'm not going to put that question to the officer. Councillor Alan Brissis. Stephen.
Yeah, we're on comments, I think. Yeah. So looking at the consultation, page 79, item 5, I'm fully aware of the way in which these clumps of lovely housing are configured, and this will need careful consideration in terms of construction, during construction, noise, disturbance, and whatever is produced on a daily basis with regard to earth and residual waste and rubble. And I would like to have it noted that this is not an ordinary construction in a tree-lined road. This is actually a very convoluted construction deep into the properties away from a major road in a squared grassed area. So I will take a keen interest in how this is done, and I will urge Jonathan to see whether the construction company will clear up on a daily basis rather than allow them to use the green as a site for waste to be mounted for weeks on end before it's collected in one fell swoop.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask, actually, Jonathan, the conditions we have list some standard conditions. It doesn't appear, unless it's in the standard conditions that exist, about the hours of work condition, which we often put on. If it's not specifically in this, could we add the one, which I can't remember the exact hours, but I think it's 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening, weekdays till 1 p.m. on Saturday, nothing later on Saturday, nothing at all on Sunday. If that condition isn't already in, that standard condition, can we put that one in? I think if the committee are in agreement on that. Yeah. Jonathan, can we do that?
Chair, certainly we can add that condition, and unlike a number of other applications for nothing more than side extensions, you'll see at condition 12, we've actually added a construction logistics plan condition. I think we recognise that this is a tight site in a little cul-de-sac, and the construction company needs to provide us with information before they actually start carrying out site preparation and development.
Okay, thank you. So with the hours of working condition and us being strict on condition 12, the construction logistics, I can't see any other comments. So the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions, including that extra condition. Can I see all those in favour? We are again all 9 and my non-vote, in effect unanimous. So agenda item 6.
I'm electing not to vote on this one, Chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. So 8 in favour and 2 not voting. That item is still passed. The next item on the agenda item 7, which is Warple Road, Wimbledon. It's a prior approval application we've been seeing quite a few of recently, which is to put 1 extra story on an existing block. Which officer is going to be presenting on this, please?
That's me, Chair. I'll just share my screen.
Yes, we can see that and we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Members, the application is at 89 Warple Road. It's currently a detached block of 8 flats in Wimbledon. The proposal is a prior approval application under the General Permitted Development Order to erect an additional story to the existing block of flats to create 2 additional flats within 1 story. You note within the planning history that there was a refusal for a previous application under the same process, which officers delegated refusal, and I have an elevation showing so you can compare between. So this application, the existing building, 4 stories, which is here. This is the front. Neighbouring block of flats to the northeast, and older, more period properties to the left, which have also been converted into flats. The proposal, so two bedroom flats would be proposed. So it would take the block from 8 flats to 10. The design of the proposal would take the form of a sort of a rooftop design, so that it would be flats accommodated at top floor level within the roof void. So you have pitched roofs and dormer windows. So as shown here from the front, you can just see the dotted outline of the existing, and then proposed is as shown. So the design proposed is to largely mimic some of the existing gable features noted in the surrounding area. Two bedroom flats, each with a small outdoor amenity space provided. To the sides, so tiled roof angling away, 2 dormer windows. Here's a pencil 3D visual provided by the applicant to show the proposal, which is here. Members, this is the previously refused scheme, so that sought 2 extra floors under the prior approval procedure. However, officers determined it didn't meet the appearance of the building test and felt it was out of keeping. So that's there just for your reference. Site photographs, this is looking on the side, we're looking at the rear of the building. As outlined in some of the visuals, there's some more pitch roof, gable end detailing in the surroundings, which is what the proposal seeks to do here. Neighbouring block of flats to the east, as I said, trying to largely mimic what has been designed over there. So from the front, as you can see, the more period Victorian conversions. So up here, although clearly a lot taller, at least with the design mimicking some in the surrounding area. So Chair, overall, officers satisfied that it has met the tests of the general permitted development order and recommend prior approval be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move to the committee for questions first. I have any questions from the members? One, Councillor Southgate and then Draper. Peter.
Yes, Chair, forgive me if I've missed it, but amenity space, I don't find any information on that.
Okay, I think I'm going to take all 3 questions and then go back to the officer to answer all 3. So I hope you're taking notes there, Tim. So Councillors Draper and then McGrath. Nick.
Yeah, I was just looking at this, and clearly the top floor as designed looks much nicer than the rest of it. Will there be any amendments to the rest of the building to bring it more into keeping with itself?
Thank you. And Councillor McGrath.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I've had a long day, so I may be just me missing something. But is it 1 additional story or 2 additional stories? In one place it says 1 and the other place it says 2. So I think 3.1, I think somewhere it says 1 and 3.2 it says 2. And then in page 100, you've very helpfully been through the new regulations and explained essentially how we don't have any reason to object to it on any of these grounds, which I think is worth doing. So am I right in saying that the only fundamental reason that we could really object to this is on appearance? Thank you.
Okay, those are 4 questions for you there, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of amenity space, each flat does propose a little outdoor amenity space at top floor level. If I just share my screen very quickly to show you. So it's off the living / kitchen area. So small outdoor amenity spaces provided there. In terms of the amendments to the rest of the building, no, the proposal is just for just to the additional floor itself. So no amendments to the rest of the building are proposed. And it is a 1-story extension. If there is reference, Chair, to the 2-story, I apologise, that is a typo. It is 1-story extension proposed for this application. And in terms of the tests of the GPDO, a matter of judgment is the appearance of the building criteria. So yes, that is the matter of judgment before members this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. There being no more questions, comments from members of the committee on this application. Councillor Southgate and Draper in that order. Thank you.
I find the on page 104.5, the inspector's judgment, extraordinary, but that we are not allowed to take impact on the street scene into account, unless I have misunderstood that, that it is in fact, we still have that discretion, but the matter of permitted development in terms of adding stories is not something we can comment on. So perhaps I should have asked that as a question rather than a statement, but as it stands, it would seem we're being instructed to ignore the impact on the street scene, which surely is the very heart of what we're trying to do, is to see how these buildings will sit within the landscape, the street scene we have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. I will take that as a question and send ask Tim if you could respond to that, please.
Chair, this is obviously it's a new legislation released last year, which us as Merton are getting used to as we go through. So what the officer has done is, as in some of the research in terms of this aspect, has found some appeal decisions where actually quite little weight, if at all, has been given to sort of street scene and wider catcher of area aspects, and relied actually the legislation does allow for up to two floors in principle. Appearance of the building, it is still a judgment, but my advice is that given the design now incorporates a pitched roof similar to the existing building and the surroundings, that it would pass that appearance of the building test.
Sorry, thank you for that. A comment from Councillor Draper.
Yeah, it's my only concern is that I think I've partly said it already. The current building is incredibly ugly, and the bit on the top of it that we're proposing here actually looks rather nice. Because we've only got a black and white drawing in front of us, I can't truly visualize what the result is going to be like. I mean, for instance, is the color of the brickwork at the top going to be the same as the rather unpleasant color of the rest of the building? Or, that's why I was asking whether there was going to be ameliorations to it. But I don't think that's I'm not even sure that's a question. That's a comment.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from members? Okay, I'll move it to the officer's recommendation, which is grant approval subject. It's grant prior approval. It's not planning commission, prior approval, subject to the conditions and permit-free legal agreement. Can I see all those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those against? 1 against, and myself not voting. That's 8, 1 and 1, which makes the 10 members. That is therefore passed, approved. The rest of the agenda, now we've finished the 3 planning applications, is appeal decisions, the report to be noted. Agreed. Planning enforcement, a short report to be noted. Agreed. Thank you very much. And the meeting is closed. We'll see you again in 4 weeks or so.